My name is Omawale. I'm from Guyana, like Walter was. In fact, he was a school friend of mine. And I was 2 years older than Walter, but we came together through the organizations that we had. He was head of the history club, and I was head of the debating society. And through that, apart from just hanging out and going to party, there was 1 year where I think we went to 30 parties in the month of August.
Okay. It sounds as if you were counting. Okay, so the Walter who came to UE, the Walter who went on to become essentially known as a revolutionary intellectual, was that Walter visible from when he was at QC?
In the sense of always questioning things, and basically because his discipline was inquiry. And so, yes.
Okay. Were you in touch with him when he came to UWI?
No. After he was banned, I was in touch with him because we tried to get him to come to the University of Guyana. He said he had a commitment, to write the major book that he wrote. And so he wasn't ready to come at that stage. But that's when we were in touch again.
So it was because of his other commitments that he didn't, in fact, go to UG to teach?
Immediately, right. Yeah. At some stage when he was ready, he actually was, in fact, recommended for appointment. But the government, because it controlled everything, decided they would not allow it. In 1968, I was just leaving the University of Toronto, and I went back to Guyana. Got the news, and I was the secretary of the staff association at the University of Guyana, and we organized a protest. We were given information about what was happening through the government, which was not our friend, but we were able to hear what was going on here to some extent. And basically what they were telling us is that there was excessive xenophobia, was how they characterized it. But next time I was in touch with Walter was actually when he came back to Guyana. That would be 1979. No, after I came back to Guyana, he was there before me. And we organized the Working People's Alliance, of which I was a member. And so up until his death, I was associated with him in the organization.
Okay. So just to clarify in terms of the Working People's Alliance, there were three co-founders of the
three
alliance?
organizations that preceded that, yes. ASCRE, which was an African Association for Cultural Relations with Independent Africa, and the University of Guyana Staff Association, I think, was one of the elements, and an Indian Revolutionary Party that was, they came together to form Working People's Alliance.
The names that one normally hears is Walter Rodney, yourself, and Rupert Ryan.
Well, that arose because of 1979, which was really after the party was formed, because the headquarters of the Burnham's party was burnt down, and we were arrested and charged with arson. Rupert Ryan, Walter, and myself. But the formation involved Guyana, AUC Guyana, who was in fact the head of ASCRE, and Moses Bagwan, who was the leader of the Indian Revolutionary Party that was part of that.
So what was the challenge that the Working People's Alliance posed to the ruling parties or the ruling alliances?
There were two streams. One was the whole issue of fighting the dictatorship, and then the other was, in fact, exactly that, the multi-ethnicity of it, and the place of the working people at the center of the struggle.
So you were therefore posing challenges to the existing streams of power.
Right. Basically, the society was supporting an African-oriented party and an Indian-oriented party. So, in fact, many of the people from both of those parties came into the Working People's Alliance. I think I was one of the few people who didn't belong to either of them, but the vast majority of people actually came from those two because they saw the light going in a different direction.
Right. Did he ever speak about the situation in Jamaica or what had happened here? Or
We did. In fact, one of the first things that he wrote was the groundings. And we were in touch through that. In fact, I was invited to, I actually wrote a second introduction. Richard Small did the first one, and I did one after that, which was a kind of a revision of the text. But he spoke a lot about that, yes. Yeah.
What were the kind of key things that would have come out of that conversation in terms of what were the factors that he felt had led to his, to his being banned and also to the response of the students?
The response of the students I'm not clear about, but his being banned was very obviously part of the whole, I would say, it was different in Guyana from Jamaica, but throughout the Caribbean, there was kind of an anti-communist fervor in the leadership. And so there were a number of people who, in fact, were on a list of people who were being watched and who were not permitted to travel some of the time. So that Walter being banned was really not a surprise.
Though presumably when he was invited to come here, at that time, even though he was being watched, it hadn't reached a stage where the government would say, no, he can't come.
Well, it was a question of the university being to some degree separate from the government. Mm-hmm. So the university welcomed him. And once he was an academic, there's really little you can do about that. But I guess once you begin to go into the communities and you have extracurricular activities, that allows the government then to exercise its authority.
Mm-hmm. There are a number of other Guyanese intellectuals who also faced challenges in Jamaica and in Trinidad, perhaps in other places.
Well, I remember that Clive Thomas was also shortly after that banned from Jamaica as well. So throughout the Caribbean, there was a kind of a list of people who were persona non grata to some extent.
Yeah. Does it strike you that a lot of those persons were from Guyana? Or do you think it was actually more balanced?
It was pretty much balanced throughout the Caribbean. It was a time when there were a lot of activities going on throughout the world that were really sort of elements of revolution or rebellion to some degree. So we were facing a very serious situation in Guyana where the government controlled virtually everything. And it was a dictatorship. And so Walter energized the working people to emerge from their allegiance to both the African-dominated party and the Indian-dominated party. And so that was the essence of what was happening in the late 70s. Well, I mean, he was, as you probably know, invited to go to the independence celebration in Zimbabwe. And the government was officially invited. Walter turned up. We were not allowed to travel. So he got out of the country and arrived, and that was an affront, I think, seen as an affront by the president, prime minister. So that once he got back into Guyana, they were determined to really shut it down. This exhibition, actually, one of the reasons I'm very interested in it is because it's really very shameful that many, many young people in the Caribbean and even in Guyana don't know about Walter and the work that he did and the kinds of things that happened. So that trying to keep that alive, to revive it, is essentially very important. Among, I guess, an intellectual group, there is knowledge about what he did, and he remains as an inspiration, certainly to the working peoples alliance, which is really very small in Guyana. It has an influence that goes way beyond its membership, and that's due to Walter as well.